We're holding another Nats Chat hangout at Walters on Wednesday, August 6th. Come join us at 5 p.m. prior to the game against the Athletics and share your early thoughts on the Mike DeBartolo era.
2-2 to Garcia. Here it is. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. The game's over. Astros win at 7-4 as Hader strikes out the side to pick up his 28th save of the season. The Nationals' 3-game winning streak is over. So is the Astros' 5-game losing streak as fireworks explode here inside Daikin Park.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at Daikin Park in Houston. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. We have arrived at the day before the 2025 MLB trade deadline, which is on Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And this just happens to be a Wednesday on which MacKenzie Gore is the Nats starting pitcher. Yes, the day before the trade deadline is, dare I say it, a McKenzie Day. Game 3 for the Nats at the Houston Astros Wednesday afternoon at 2:10. MacKenzie Gore will be the Nats starting pitcher. This with all kinds of reports and rumblings and conversation about whether the Nats will/should trade Gore. We did have this from MLB insider John Heyman of the New York Post in a post on X on Tuesday night. Quote, nearly every contender has checked on Nats all-star left-hander MacKenzie Gore. Nats are listening as promised, but most come away thinking Gore stays in D.C., end quote. Meantime, pitching for the Nats on Tuesday night was a starting pitcher who the Nats absolutely should trade in the lead up to this deadline, Michael Soroka. No offense to Soroka, but he's a veteran on a one-year contract. The Nats on Tuesday night did lose a 7-4 loss at the American League West leading Houston Astros in Game 2 of a 3-game series, ending the Nats' 3-game winning streak and dropping the Nats to 44-63. And Soroka did not exactly kill it in this, perhaps his final outing for the Nats. This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by Window Nation. Do not miss Window Nation's biggest deal of the year. The deadline to get 50% off all window styles is the same as the trade deadline, July 31st. You can find us on X at Nats_chat. You can hit us up on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you would like to sponsor the program. It happened again. A runner in a Nats game at the Astros was called out for interference in running down the first baseline. Unreal. We'll get to that. But Mark, Michael Soroka, has he done enough to generate being traded prior to Thursday's deadline? That's the question.
I believe he has, Al. Now, has he done enough to really bring something of significant value back? I think that's more debatable. And as we've talked about, if you're a contending team and you're showing interest in him, you're doing so not because of his bottom line stats, but because of the peripherals and, quite frankly, just the way that he's looked at times. And you're not going to do this because you think he's somebody who's going to help anchor your rotation. You're doing it because you need a 4th or 5th starter, someone you're willing to use for only 4 or 5 innings. Maybe you have a deep bullpen and can afford to do that kind of thing. So I think you know what you're getting. And because of that, if I'm the Nationals, look, you ask for as much as you can get. But as you said, 1 year, $9 million deal, probably wouldn't have figured into next year's plans regardless. You ultimately have to take whatever the best offer is. You just hope that it's something that you can go back on and say, okay, that was worthwhile. This is somebody who could help us in the future. And you're not just trading him away for, a low A-ball prospect who's never going to make it up here.
It was an odd outing for Soroka on Tuesday night. He lasted for just 3 1/3 innings. He allowed 2 runs in 3 1/3 innings. He gave up 4 hits, which were a home run, a double, and 2 singles. He issued a hit by pitch. He did have 4 strikeouts versus no walks. He threw 74 pitches, 47 strikes, 27 balls. What'd you make of interim manager Miguel Cairo pulling Michael Soroka after just 3 1/3 innings and just 74 pitches?
A little surprising. That was both his lowest number of pitches he's thrown this year and the fewest innings. The first time he didn't complete 4 innings. And we don't think of this as a guy who usually goes deep in a game, but he had always given them at least 4, and he had gotten to, I think, at least 78 pitches. Most often would be in the 80s or even the low 90s. So a little surprised by that, but the explanation from Cairo was essentially every one of his innings was high stress. That first inning set him back so much. He threw 28 pitches to the first 4 batters of the game that he faced. They fouled off 13 of those 28 pitches. So I asked him, is that a product of him not being as crisp as he should have been? Is it a credit to the Astros? And he said it was probably a combination of both. He felt he threw some very uncompetitive pitches that put him in a bad spot, but he also thought the Astros did a decent job of battling off some tough pitches and prolonging those at bats. So you do all that, and even though he just gave up the 1 run and only faced 5 batters that inning, he's already behind the 8 ball in his pitch count. It was another high-stress second inning, even though they didn't score off him. By the time he gives up the homer in the 4th, I think the feeling was this probably isn't going to end well. He's probably not going to be able to make it through this inning. Let's go ahead and make the move right now. Now, you could also take the cynical look at this and say this was the Nationals trying to protect his arm, make sure nothing else happened for somebody who is very much on the trade block in the next 48 hours, or not wanting him to have a blow-up inning that makes it look even worse. And hey, let's cut our losses right here and pull him at this point. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but he just wasn't as crisp as he needed to be. I think it was a lot of high-stress pitches and innings from him. And so they decided it's not worth it. Let's not try to push this any farther.
Yeah, I had that thought when he got pulled. Not so much the injury concern, but the blow-up inning concern. I was wondering if maybe the fear was, if we leave this guy in here, he's not exactly thriving in this game. What if he gets shellacked? That's not going to look good with us trying to trade him. So you look at Soroka for the Nats here, 16 starts, ERA 4.87, whip 1.13, strikeouts per 9 innings, 9.63. As we have discussed, the ERA not good. The peripherals are good. I think it's going to be so interesting to see what teams value with him. And if he does get traded, what's the thinking here? More and more, we are seeing front offices value peripherals over bottom line stats, because there's a lot that goes into a pitcher's ERA, and it's not always stuff that the pitcher can control. I had this thought, though. So he is a strikeout pitcher. He hasn't exactly done supremely well as a starting pitcher going back to last season, but he did do well last season as a reliever. Do you think it's possible a contending team would trade for Soroka for the purpose of using him as a reliever as opposed to a starter this season?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely on the table, depending on who the team is, what else they have. I don't know that you look at him as like a high leverage 7th inning guy, something like that, only because can he handle that kind of workload all of a sudden, given his injury history of, having to pitch every other day or 3 times in 4 days? And, if you're in a pennant race, they ask a lot of you in that kind of role. So maybe not that, but if you have a team that, let's say, uses a bulk reliever kind of thing, tries to piggyback a reliever after a starter who's pulled early, just somebody to go through the lineup once, I could absolutely see him having value. If you have a team that's willing to spend that kind of money on someone like that believes in the stuff that he's shown, absolutely, I think it's a possibility. There's a handful of teams that might fit that description. There may also be a few teams out there. We know how valuable starting pitching is. And there are teams that may just say, we need a 4th or 5th starter. Even if he only goes 4 or 5 innings every time, that's still more valuable to us than the other stuff. So I think there should be a market. It's just a matter of what can you really reasonably get for him. But I'm always reminded of this, that Mike Rizzo traded John Lester for Lane Thomas. And maybe that's too much to ask for something that good in return. But it does show you that sometimes a starting pitcher who doesn't blow you out of the water based on his numbers and his performance this year can still fetch a decent price at the trade deadline, because those arms are so valuable this time of year.
John Lester and his ERA over 5 got turned into Lane Thomas. Now, I guess the thing you could say about Lester is he has this outstanding playoff resume. And so when he got traded to the Cardinals, maybe the thinking was, hey, if we get playoff Johnny in full effect in this coming October, then maybe the trade ends up being worth it. It's interesting, too, because when you get to the postseason, you don't need 5 starters, right? You need 4 at most. Michael Soroka is not going to be anything more than a number 4 starter on a good team. I suppose you could say, well, we want him as a starter because he'll help us get to the postseason. But if you're a good team, in theory, you already have at least 4 decent starting pitchers. And so that might further add credence to the idea of trading for Soroka to be a reliever. It'll be interesting to see what ends up happening here. Mark mentioned the injury history. Soroka on the 15-day injured list. April 4th, retroactive to April 1st to May 7th due to a right arm bicep strain. Hey, it's Al Galdi for Window Nation. The dog days of August are right around the corner. The humidity is rather thick. You've got the AC running on blast, the fans on, and the shades closed, but the heat still seems to be seeping into your home. That is, until you replace your old, drafty windows with energy-efficient, top-quality windows from Window Nation. And right now, you can get 50% off all window styles plus zero interest for 5 years. You heard that right. With Window Nation, you won't pay any interest until 2030. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. Also, know this, Window Nation will get the job done in a day or less. Window Nation's installation crews have over a decade of experience, so you can feel comfortable knowing that your windows are installed right the first time. Don't procrastinate another day. Save yourself another month of living in discomfort. Don't miss Window Nation's biggest deal of the year, 50% off all window styles now through July 31st. And remember, that comes with zero interest until 2030. 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. That's 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. And tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast.
Still no one warming in the Nationals bullpen. Lara delivers, swing and a slow bouncer, third base side of the mound, fielded by Lara, and he throws it away past first base. Altuve trotting home, he will score. The ball.
They're going to call the batter out. Trey Turner rule in Houston.
How about
it goes for the Nationals for the first time maybe ever.
How about that?
Smith was out of the baseline, out of the path, and Joe Espada's going to argue.
So Michael Soroka struggled in this 7-4 Nats loss at the Astros on Tuesday night, and the Nats bullpen in this game was not good. 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 5 runs in 4 2/3 innings. Cole Henry tossed 2/3 of a scoreless inning. He in the bottom of the 4th faced 3 batters and got 2 outs. Andrew Chafin officially allowed a run in 2/3 of an inning. He and what ended up being a 1-run fifth for the Astros faced 4 batters, but got just 2 outs. He gave up a 2-out single and then issued a 2-out walk. Andry Lara, he officially allowed 4 runs in 1 2/3 innings. He came into the game in the bottom of the 5th with runners on first and second, 2 outs, and the game tied at 2. And he, on the first pitch that he threw, gave up a 2-out RBI single by Cooper Hummel into right center field for a 3-2 Astros lead. Lara, in the bottom of the 6th, allowed 3 runs on 4 singles and a walk. And things could have been even worse for Lara, because he, in that Astros 3-run 6 with runners on first and second and 2 outs, threw the ball away on a play that ended up with Cam Smith being called out for interference in running down the first baseline. And yes, I did say that a runner in a Nats game at the Astros was called out for interference in running down the first baseline. This happened again, an interference call in a game for the Nats at the Astros. And I think most people remember the most famous instance of this, Game 6 of the 2019 World Series, a 7-2 Nats win, despite then Nats shortstop Trey Turner in the top of the 7th being called out for interference in a very famous play. But we also had a 5-4 Nats walk-off loss at the Astros on June 14th, 2023. Catcher Keibert Ruiz, his throw to first base, going off the batting helmet of Jake Myers and/or the glove of then Nats first baseman Michael Chavis, if you remember that name, into right field. Jose Abreu scored the walk-off run on what went down as a throwing error by Ruiz. The then Nationals manager, a man named Davey Martinez, he came out to argue that Myers was guilty of interference. No interference was called, and the play was not reviewable. So 2019 World Series Game 6, this game in June 2023, and now what happened on Tuesday night. Look, you know this team better than anybody. How incredible is it that this happened again in a game for the Nats at the Astros?
My jaw hit the floor. I could not believe it. I even made a joke on Twitter prior to the series opener with like a photo of the stadium saying, I'm here in Houston. Hopefully there won't be any interference calls near first base, thinking, of course, that's not going to happen again. And then it happened again. And for the first time ever, the call went the Nationals' way. that's the kicker on top of it all, is they finally got it called in their favor. And I do think it was the right call. When you watch it, he is not just not in the runner's lane, but he's on the grass. And remember, MLB actually did change this rule finally to say that you just need to be in the dirt, not necessarily in the runner's lane. He was clearly in the grass, did interfere right as the throw came in. Now, it's another one of these cases where, like, it's not a great throw. And as soon as Lara picked up the ball, you're thinking, oh, God, here's going to be disaster. And sure enough, but based on what the rule is and how we've seen it enforced or not enforced over the years, it did feel to me like it was the proper call. And I couldn't believe my eyes that I had just seen this happen yet again in the same ballpark with these same two teams. Thankfully, this one had no bearing on the outcome of the game, because if it did, God, we'd be writing about this all over again. It was kind of just a funny footnote to it all. But, oh, my God, I could not believe that happened again here.
Sports are incredible, and this is like exhibit A of that something like this happens again. This is such a rare occurrence, and yet for it to have come up in some form or fashion 3 times now for the Nats when they play at the Astros. I mean, what are the statistical odds of that being the case? And yet that is the case. I do want to say this. I don't understand why when something like this happens, an umpire doesn't get on the stadium mic and say, hey, here's what we just called. Here's what is going down. Because if you're not watching the game on TV or listening to the game on the radio or are in the press box, there's a good chance you had no idea what happened. Just watching that play without any sound, any help, any aid, you would have a hard time figuring out what happened. And I don't understand why these umpires can't announce to the crowd, hey, here's what we just called. Here's what happened, onward and upward.
100%. I've been saying this for years, even before the umpires had a microphone to announce replay calls. I've been saying forever, why not have this to announce any kind of thing that doesn't look obvious? We see it all the time on things like catcher's interference or, a little ball in front of the plate. Did he call it fair? Did he call it foul? What was the call there? What is so hard about coming on and just letting everybody know here's what it was, instead of trying to interpret hand signals and where they're placing the runners? And I'll tell you, if I hadn't seen this play happen so many times with the Nationals over the last 6 years, I would have been just as confused. And I'm sure there were a ton of people in the ballpark who don't know the history of it and probably could not figure out what exactly had happened. I don't know why that's the case. It's right there. Just tell us. It's not that complicated. Just get on the microphone and tell us. But they've been instructed you only use it to announce replays and challenges and that kind of stuff. And so that's all they have the microphone for.
No one is asking these umpires to do stand-up routines, okay? But just make an announcement of what's going on. I mean, to me, that's as obvious as can be in terms of a common sense way to make the viewing experience better for the ticket-paying fan. And then also with the Nats bullpen in this game, Jackson Rutledge, he officially tossed 1 2/3 scoreless innings.
Will he throw him another one on 0-2? Abrams dancing off third. Here's the pitch. Swing and a fly ball to right field. This is deep. This is way back. This ball is gone. Goodbye. Bang! Zoom goes Luis Garcia Jr., who figured out the changeup there. A 2-out, 2-run shot here in Houston draws the boos from the Astros fans as the ball is thrown back onto the field. Luis Garcia Jr. has given the Nationals the lead here in the top of the third. It's the Nationals 2 and the Astros 1.
The Nats offense in this 7-4 loss at the Astros on Tuesday night actually was pretty good. I mean, 4 runs, 10 hits, 3 walks, 3 for 10 with runners in scoring position. That's not bad. The 10 hits were a homer, 2 doubles, and 7 singles. The Nats did strike out 14 times. So the Nats over the first 2 games of this series have struck out a whopping 33 times. But we had an RBI hit by the slumping James Wood. Good to see that. He is the Nats starting left fielder and number 2 batter, 1 for 5 with an RBI single. He did strike out 3 times, but Wood in the Nats 1-run 7th, a 2-out RBI single to right center field to cut the Nats deficit to 6-3. Luis Garcia Jr., he is the Nats starting second baseman and number 3 batter, 2 for 5 with a 2-run homer and a single. Garcia in the Nats 2-run third, a 2-out 2-run homer to right field on an 0-2 pitch, down around his ankles for a 2-1 Nats lead. How about that by Garcia? A, an 0-2 pitch, and B, a ball that was almost in the dirt, and he ends up golfing it for a homer.
That was remarkable. And it tells you what I think we sometimes tend to forget is that Luis Garcia is a really strong hitter. And I say that meaning he can swing at pitches that are not the kind of pitches you should normally be doing damage on. And he can wind up making really good contact on it. And yes, his bat to ball skills are way above average, but he actually can do that and have success with it and hit the ball 370 feet like he did. That was a stunning display of, bad process to swing at an 0-2 changeup at your ankles. Great result. And he's one of the only guys in baseball, I believe, who can actually do that like that. The notorious bad ball hitter, you used to call them. And, good for him for being able to do that. I don't know that you want to get him into that habit of swinging like that often, but we know this is who he is. It just kind of happens with him. And in some ways, when he does have success swinging at a pitch like that, it probably only encourages him to keep swinging because, why take a pitch if you can hit it out? So that was nice to see from him. Overall, they did all right, but there were several opportunities in this game where just one more clutch hit, they would have been right in the thick of this game. And as you mentioned, all the strikeouts, there were several strikeouts with runners in scoring position with an opportunity to get themselves back in the game, and they could not do it, and wound up, losing by 3 runs, the game that might have actually been closer than that.
C.J. Abrams had a good game. He is the Nats starting shortstop and number 1 batter, 3 for 4 with a double, 2 singles and a walk, went 3 for 4 on stolen bases. Did get picked off. That was bad, but overall, good offensive production from Abrams. And Dalen Lyle, he is the Nats starting right fielder and number 7 batter, 2 for 4 with an RBI double and a single. As Dylan Cruz has begun his rehab assignment, you would think there is some added pressure here on a Dalen Lyle, on a Jacob Young. Young going 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts in this game to see what happens. I mean, when Cruz is healthy, there's going to need to be a corresponding roster move. Presumably, it'll come at the expense of one of these outfielders. And so I would think there's some pressure right now on these guys to play well.
Yeah, I'm continue to be fascinated about how this is all going to play itself out. And I think Lyle, he keeps doing just enough to make you want to see more of it. And it hasn't always been smooth. He has made some mistakes in the field, and the total offensive numbers are not great, but he does seem to come through. That was a really nice at bat from him to drive in that run with the double in the 8th inning. That was good to see from him. Jacob Young, this was a struggle of a game. Overall, he's been better at the plate, and we know he's been outstanding in the field. Robert Hassel III has been really good at AAA here for a while, and it makes me wonder something that we've brought up before, and I don't know the answer to this, but I guess we're going to find out in the next 36 hours or so. Would there be any trade interest in Alex Call? And if so, could that be a way to open up a spot for an outfielder? And then would you be willing to keep one of the young guys, not in an everyday role, but on the bench? I know they don't typically like to do that, but maybe there's an argument if you have more of an outfield rotation to do something like that, where you have, say, Cruz, Wood, Lyle, and Young as your 4 outfielders and rotate guys in and out. Maybe use the DH spot, especially if Josh Bell gets traded. Maybe there's a path to do something like that, and the path to do that would potentially be to trade Alex Call.
I think that would make a lot of sense. I've also wondered this with the trades. Could you see a package sell-off in some circumstance? So, maybe like Alex Call and Kyle Finnegan are packaged together, and that helps to up the return with whatever team you're dealing with, that kind of a thing. So, there are a lot of possibilities here. We still have only seen the Nats make the one trade, the Ahmed Rosario trade. We are seeing a good number of trades right now in MLB. I mean, it's not like teams are waiting for Thursday. We're seeing a bunch of trades every day. You have multiple trades breaking. The Nats so far, just the one trade. I don't feel like that means that we're not going to get many trades. Like, it feels like we're going to get a lot, and we're just waiting for when the a lot ends up happening. There's no reason for them not to trade these guys on expiring contracts. However you feel about the MacKenzie Gore situation, there's zero reason not to trade all of these veterans on expiring deals. And so I would think those guys will get traded. It just may not happen until Thursday. We'll see.
Yeah, right. And, the scheduling of it with a quick turnaround to a day game on Wednesday. Yes, you make the move whenever you get a good offer, but you also have to still field a team that can play in a game. And it's pretty hard to get people here to Houston in time for a 1:00 local start Wednesday. So maybe the attitude is, let's get through this last game. Then maybe starting Wednesday night and then all day Thursday, they have till 6 p.m., an off day for the team. I would imagine there's going to be a lot of activity down to the wire. And there have been trades around baseball the last few days, but somebody put the chart out there. I saw it earlier in the day. Looking back the last 10 trade deadlines, there's a huge spike on that final day. Every year, it's a significant number of trades. There's a few that lead up to it, but it's always far and away the most trades made on the final day leading up to the deadline. So I wouldn't read a whole lot into the fact that they haven't done anything yet besides the Rosario deal.
Regarding MacKenzie Gore and him starting on Wednesday, do you think there will be anything different about this outing? I mean, if they're not going to trade him, I suppose there shouldn't be. Like I said earlier, I think it is worth noting this. The reporting has been pretty clear. The reporting is that teams are interested in Gore. The reporting has not been that the Nats are likely to trade Gore. In fact, the reporting has been the opposite. When the Nats traded Juan Soto, the reporting was clear. They were open to trading him. They were in talks to trade him. You're not getting that this time with Gore. So, to me, I think you have to be ready for anything if you're a Nats fan here, okay? But right now, I think if you follow what's being reported, unless the reporting is way off, it doesn't feel like Gore is going to be dealt. It feels like a lot of teams are interested in him, but it does not feel like the Nats are looking to trade him.
Yeah, I think you look back to the Soto one, and once that news got out, however it got out, of him turning down the $440 million extension, what you then saw was so much discussion of it that I think it helped drive the conversation and create a competing market between several teams. And I think ultimately Mike Rizzo probably knew, if I'm going to do this, I need to get the absolute best package I can get. And so I want teams to know that we are interested in doing this and try to get the Padres and the Cardinals and forget whoever else it was at the time involved with that and to drive up the price. And it got to the point where the Padres did make him an offer that he couldn't refuse. Now, if they didn't go there, if AJ Preller wasn't willing to meet that huge price, then I think Rizzo would have been fine walking at the end of the day and saying, we're going to keep him, we'll re-examine this later on. But by putting it out there, I think it helped drive the price up and made it seem like, hey, if you want Juan Soto, now's the time, come calling. You're seeing a very different approach in this case where, as you said, the other teams are calling to find out, hey, what would it take to get MacKenzie Gore? And by all accounts, what they're hearing in response is, okay, that's more than I really want to be willing to spend for this guy. So I think the price is very high. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody doesn't budge here in the next 36 hours. And if somebody before 6 o'clock on Thursday comes back to Mike DeBartolo and says, okay, yeah, you know what? I'm willing to give you X, Y, and Z. And DeBartolo says, that's a really good package. I'm going to take this to ownership and see if they say yes to it. I do think it's possible. I still don't think it's likely for all the reasons we've outlined. This is more a case of teams wanting to see what it would take to get him as opposed to DeBartolo openly shopping him around, which, we'll find out for sure in a couple days. But so far, I think Mike DeBartolo's been pretty true to his word. I'm going to trust that he's been pretty straightforward with all of us about how he's approaching this.
You wonder, too, if maybe these talks are the groundwork, the foundation for an offseason trade. You don't have to trade the player in season. Sometimes you get more by waiting until the offseason because, in theory, you have more suitors in the offseason because both contenders and non-contenders from the previous season might be interested. This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by Window Nation. Do not miss Window Nation's biggest deal of the year. The deadline to get 50% off all window styles is the same as the trade deadline, July 31st. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. Hit us up on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. We do shout-outs on this podcast. If you would like for us to deliver a shout-out to someone who you care about, a congratulations, a happy birthday, a get well soon, a happy anniversary, whatever you want, email the man who runs this podcast, Tim Shovers. The email address, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
First pitch to Turner, and a full swing and a dribbler up the third base side. This is going to be a tough chance. Peacock hurries his throw, and the ball gets away. The ball through Gurriel down the right field line. Gomes is going to head for third and Turner to second as Gurriel's glove got knocked off, and they're going to call Turner out for being out of the baseline.
Oh, my.
So instead of second and third, they're going to send Gomes back to first, and Turner is out for being out of the baseline. And Davey Martinez is livid at Sam Holbrook.
He's saying he's on the outside. Davey is livid. And he wants to talk to Sam Holbrook, who's coming over.
So Turner is out, and Gomes goes all the way back to first, and Martinez is steaming, pointing up the line, saying this is where Turner was running, right down the line.